Good evening. Welcome to the sixth in a series of forums with candidates for office for November 2nd. This is being brought to you by Cayuga Community College and The Citizen. These forums are shown on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, as well as played on the college's radio station, Win 89.1. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 2nd, the voters in Cayuga County's 15th Legislative District will go to the polls to pick a new person to represent them in the Cayuga County Legislature. Legislator Ryan Foley, a Democrat, has decided not to seek another term. The candidates seeking to replace him are Brian Dahl on the Republican and Conservative lines, and Brian Muldrow, who is on the Democrat, Working Families, and Auburn Party lines. And they're in the studio today to talk to the voters in that district and the community at large. This district is on the western side of the city of Auburn, roughly going from Underwood and Wallace Streets up through the city to Boyle Center, and then over to Liberty Street. The 15-member legislature has 6 Democrats currently, 5 Republicans, 1 conservative, and 3 non-affiliated members. With half the legislature up this year and 4 incumbents not running for re-election, control of the legislature could change this January, depending on these elections. Representing the press today, as always, is a familiar face, is Jeremy Boyer. I would say that you could read his column every Thursday, but he had something else on the editorial page today. So we'd like to welcome the executive editor of The Citizen back into the studio. I think he's been doing this for about 15 years, so thank you for doing this. As with everything around the world that has changed because of COVID, we've kind of changed the forums and adapted to the health protocols of the state of New York and the SUNY system. Both candidates are in the studios. And we've limited the number of students who can be here. They are all masked, but the candidates, as long as they are 6 feet apart, once they are seated, can have their masks off, and the same is the case with Mr. Boyer and myself. Prior to taping the show, the candidates drew lots to see who would go first, and that order will be reversed for closing statements. And so starting us off, I would like to welcome them again in the order that they will be speaking, but we're going to hear from Brian Muldrow, who's on the Democratic, Working Family, and Auburn Party line. Mr. Muldrow, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me. First of all, I want to thank Cayuga Community College, the Citizen, and Spectrum TV for hosting this debate. Same to you, Jeremy, and Guy, for your participation. For those who don't know me, I'm Brian Muldrow. I'm running for Legislator in District 15. I lived in District 15 my entire life. I own several businesses in town, and I own commercial real estate downtown. Those traits have taught me how to negotiate, how to reason with people, how to learn their needs and their ability to some of their. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. First debate. Okay, let's get that. I get all the goosebumps off. Okay. But I've also been inspired by a lot of community leaders to join boards. I've joined the Booker T. Washington board. I sit on United Way board, and those skill sets have allowed me to listen to the community, find out their needs, and be able to work with them. My professional experience gives me the ability to resolve problems and conflicts, and be able to negotiate budgets, talk about budgets, create budgets, and it puts the groundwork of me being a great legislator. Those tools have gave me the abilities to become a good legislator.
Thank you, Mr. Muldrow. We'll now hear from Brian Dahl, who is on the Republican and Conservative lines. Welcome back to the college. Glad to have you here in the studio.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon to all of our constituents, and thank you to the college staff, the students, and today's forum moderators. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in the town of Troop, just outside the city of Auburn. I attended and graduated Port Byron High School. After graduation, I found the love of my life, my wife, Paulette. We've had 2 wonderful children, all here of Auburn. My parents raised 7 children. My dad worked construction for many years until he retired. Mom stayed at home until the last child was old enough to go to school and she could actually go back into the workforce. She sold Avon, did Rubbermaid, and she was a receptionist at Auburn Community Hospital. I have worked and lived in Auburn all my life, since the day I could push a lawnmower at age 5. I was out making money. I was working with the public. Sometimes I made a couple of bucks here and there. Sometimes I did it for nothing just to help out my friends and family and neighbors. Today, I'm retired from Cayuga County after working for 15 years after a battle with liver and kidney disease. Yes, I'm a transplant survivor. My work experience working for Auburn Memorial Hospital, now Auburn Community Hospital, has made me a better person. We worked as a team there. We worked to get the job completed, took care of our loved ones with care, compassion, and empathy to every patient and every employee. I began in 1995 working as a county deputy EMS coordinator, all the while raising the family, working the local fire department as a volunteer, and then I accepted in 2004 the director of emergency services. I retired in 2018, 39 years as a volunteer fire chief, and currently the president, CEO of the Troop Fire Department, and an EMS provider for all of those years. I have served and led many state and local groups with great success. Like I said, I was the fire chief for many years, president, CEO, active members for 39 years. I was the president of the Central New York EMS Agency, New York State Emergency Management Association, as well as the Lake District. I was the president there as well, all managing budgets, working with people across the state. Very active with the Finger Lakes baseball, served as a board member and a coach for many years. I'm a mentor to many. I have worked side by side with all department heads and Cayuga County legislatures throughout my years, managing a whole broad of things, including budgets, water quality, pandemic planning. The number one goal here is communication, cooperation, and collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. We'll now have questions from Mr. Boyer. As we said, we have Kelvin, who's a student here at Cayuga, is going to hold up a sign about 1.5 minutes into your answers, and we'll hold up a red sign to tell you to finish up your statement. We'll go back and forth, and we'll do this in a rotating order. Mr. Boyer can ask you questions individually or as a group. If it's to both of you, we'll just go back and forth. Mr. Boyer, welcome back.
All right, thank you, and thanks to both of you for coming today and answering some questions. We'll try to get through a bunch of topics today. And for starters, I'd like to ask you to give voters a sense of how you would be in comparison with the current office holder, Ryan Foley, the legislator who has decided not to run for re-election. And so he's been serving the district, I think, almost 8 years. So I'm guessing people know him pretty well in the district. So given that, what you know about him and his performance, I'd like you to tell me sort of what you would like to do differently or what you think you could improve on from what he's done, but also what you think he's done well, what you would try to continue.
Okay, Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 2 minutes to talk about, compare and contrast yourself with Ryan Foley, the current incumbent.
Yeah, I met Ryan Foley, and I don't know him well. I happen to live in the District 15 my entire life, so the whole 8 years he served. I think that there was things I would have done differently. As I canvassed my territory and learned in my district, I started learning about needs of some of the people that were being unmet. So, for instance, I talked about the lack of transportation. Some of the people at the Boyle Center and some sports towers have had not the fact that they have the SCAT van. However, the SCAT van doesn't include some of the recreational opportunities that they could have, and I would have been a voice for them. Also, I wrote a letter to the editor talking about bad landlords. And let me be clear, we need landlords to deal with tough tenants. However, the bad landlords that are out there have ran rapid in District 15. And I think that just the upkeep and some of the issues they had, I think Brian missed that point. Ryan missed that point. However, he has done a lot of good for the community as well. So as I get to learn the position, I can learn from some of his mistakes. And I also could, I've heard different challenges that he probably has missed in his time in this 8-year term.
Thank you, Mr. Muldrow. We'll now hear from Mr. Dahl on this issue of comparing and contrasting with the current incumbent.
Well, as being a constituent of Ryan, I've reached out to him with several concerns that I've had and never received a phone call back with any type of communication from him. It's talking, going door to door and speaking with the constituents in my area and outside my area. Some of the things that were voted on in the past that they had voted no against, that they wanted him to vote no against, they voted against their wishes. A lot of them didn't know who he even was. That's something that I will change. I will make sure that we have forum meetings, we have door-to-door campaigns, we will have mailers that go out to these people, letting them all know where we are at. There's a lot of hidden stuff in our local government that needs to be exposed, and our constituents need to know that, and I will change that.
Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 1 minute.
You know, I think that it's fair to say that, you know, it's easy to attack the last person in there. I didn't agree with everything, but I don't necessarily believe there's hidden things. You know, we as legislators, if I get to the point, there's people to watch this. There's people to come and join the conversation. I challenge the fact there is hidden conversations. Now, maybe his policies and some of the things that he had voted on may have been unpopular with some certain people. And I'm not defending Ryan, right? I just say that it takes a party, it takes both parties. There's not been a legislature in the county that's been passed without the support of a Democrat, without the support of a Republican. So therefore, I think that we should working together and coming up with solutions rather than pointing fingers. Right now, Ryan's term is done. Right, it's done in January, and one of us will be in. And I think our job is to have progressive conversations that are productive, that we can actually have a conversation where we can work together. Because at the core of this, we are all living in District 15. So it doesn't do any good to point fingers back and forth.
Oh, anything to follow up? Or
yeah. I agree and I disagree. There has been many things that have been done behind closed doors that I am very privy to when I was the director, of things that were done and how they were handled. So I have an inside view of that. I can't go into specifics because I just can't. And no, you're right. We do need to work together. And that's the problem with our government now, is no one's working together.
Well, I'm going to go to Mr. Boyer, and he can do the next question if you want to include it in. Mr. Boyer?
Okay. Well, in terms of the district itself, for every one of these debates, I get out the map and look at the district. And this one's a little unique in that you're coming in this little strip, this strip of territory from the western border down Genesee Street, and then kind of taking a left and going up north and capturing some of that neighborhood around the hospital. So there is going to be redistricting discussions in the legislature with the new legislature that gets sworn in. So with respect to this district, 15, is this something that you would definitely like to see changed in the way it's drawn up? And if so, what do you think would be a better way to divide up the city?
Mr. Dahl, you'll go first. You have 2 minutes on this.
I am in agreement to redistricting the county, particularly the city. We're currently, right now, there's 6 districts. I think we can bring that number from 6 down to 4, bringing us to 13 legislatures, and having the weighted vote system that we currently have now go away, and each legislature get 1 vote. It makes it a lot easier, because I can go down Seymour Street and go down to Cross Street, but I have one side of Cross Street but not the other side of Cross Street, and the same thing up on Beach Ave. So it's just the whole street or none of the street. I just wish they would fix that, and that's something that we're going to have to work on over the next 2 years. So when the next new slate of legislatures come through, because we're only 2-year positions, we're not 4 years like everyone else, and everybody will come up for a revote, the entire legislature, in 2 years.
Mr. Muldrow, on this issue of redistricting, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so yes, I believe that we need to make some changes. You know, I looked at the gerrymandering, and by definition, it was a map that was designed to include the rich, the poor, the Democrat, Republican, and whoever, and nobody has is escaped fault at this. So whoever, you know, when we created this map, that's why we have this odd shaped map. And I think that we should downsize to 5. I think 5 is a good number. I think that we should keep and that's if the districts are able to be small, because when 10% of within 10% of each district, one should be no greater than another, and then we don't need to wait to vote at that point. But if we redistrict this, where a high population of people are in one district compared to the other, more than 10%, we definitely need a way to vote, which I'm not in support of. So I think that we have to, with the census, with the population dropping, we have to really hone in on what makes sense. 5 makes sense to me. As we get in further conversations, maybe that will change, but that's where I'm at today.
Just to clarify, when you say 5, are you referring to the full legislature going from 15 to 5?
No.
The city.
The city, yes.
City from 6 to 5.
The city, yes, not the full legislation.
Okay,
city.
and then if you do that, how would you? What would, I think Mr. Dahl said you would go for taking 2 out, making it 4, and having a 13-member legislature.
Correct. It has
So
to be
what would be your?
This is one thing that we both agree on.
Okay.
Yeah. So I agree on that.
So you would take 1 out of the city and 1 out of the outside of the
and
city.
go to 13.
Okay. Well,
Hold on, Mr. Dahl, do you have anything you want to add? Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
I'll say I think we covered redistricting then, pretty much. Well, I have a couple questions next for each of you. Sort of one-on-one, and we do these. They get.
So we went through the rules before you arrived.
Excellent.
And, the person who gets the question gets 2 minutes. Their opponent gets 1, and then we go back to the person who got the question originally.
Gotcha.
They'll get a minute, and then determining on where we are, we might give their opponent 1 minute
Gotcha.
as well.
Well, Mr. Dahl, you did refer to your experience working in county government and all that goes along with that. With that said, there's some voters out there that might say, putting a legislator in with all this experience or knowing all these people that still work in county government, having all this background might lead to some potential conflict, especially decisions that you might have to make related to the departments that you were most closely involved with. So I'm just wanting to know, how would you respond to that kind of a concern?
There was never any personal relationships with any of the legislature or any of the employees. It was a business only. So I don't think there would be a conflict. One department would favor more than the next. I work with everyone. I work with people in the field every day, and not one person is favored, not one person is discriminated against. So it would be treated fairly.
Mr. Dahl had 2 minutes. Mr. Muldrow, you'll get 1 minute on this.
As a Brian just said earlier, he accused Ryan Foley of having some issues, right? Some issues that were some backdoor deals. I don't know the terminology he used. If he is a county employee, he has an obligation to expose them and talk about them. So therefore, I do think that's a conflict. I'm the only person that's never worked. I'm one of the candidates that's never worked in the county. I never worked as a city employee. I've never been a political figure. I sat on boards that were not-for-profit boards to help to better his community. But his previous statement was that he didn't want to get into describing what Ryan might have done. And I don't believe Ryan done anything that was unscrupulous that I know of. If I did, I would tell you. He just said that he had a different relationship right now, that he would not be having those type of relationships. So I just question that, and I like to tell you that I'm coming in clean. When I say coming in clean, I'm not a politician. I ran for the better good of this of my district, and I've been sitting on boards, and that's why this community knows me. They know me for that reason only.
Mr. Dahl, I said at the beginning you would get 1 minute if you wanted to follow up with anything.
Yeah, I think you're taking what I said out of context. When I said that Ryan hasn't been communicating with people and there was sidebar stuff going on, as a department head, you just don't go and report somebody like that because there's always a backlash. However, I did go to the county administrator and went to the chairperson. Whether they choose to do something with that, that's on them. I just have knowledge of what was being done.
Mr. Boyer.
Well, and let me turn it kind of around on you, Mr. Muldrow. The fact that you don't have experience working in government, in particular in comparison to your opponent, his knowledge of the inner workings of the budget and all the departments and who reports to who, might lead a voter to say, I'd rather go with him. So what do you say to that?
I would say that, you know, I created programs outside of being a legislator. I sat on boards outside of that, and I've been effective on those boards. And being removed from politics and coming in with fresh sets of eyes gives me the ability to not have those relationships, but just to fight through these conversations. Because at this point, what I want to do is I just want to make District 15 the best district in our city, and I want to work on that. So I've done things. I started a sports program to keep our youth busy. I sat on the United Way. I sit on the Booker T. Washington board. I started a minority professional association that doesn't help minorities. It helps women. It helps the black and brown people. It helps people that have small businesses. And I sat on the mentors SCORE for a while. So those type of background prepares me to go into this job, knowing how to navigate through these conversations without any connection to any political party in relationships. I can't. So go ahead.
No. Mr. Dahl, do you have anything you want to add?
I, too, have been involved in many organizations. I put my heart and soul in the volunteer fire service world, where we do a lot of fire prevention in schools, different organizations. As a medic, I treat every patient with dignity and care. It doesn't matter what color their skin is. I treat them with utmost respect and care. I put my heart and soul in everything that I do. And politics aside, I don't bring politics into those organizations unless they ask me a question about Cayuga County.
Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 1 minute to follow up, and then we'll move on.
You know, I think that what we have to do is understand that I believe that Brian does have a good skill set that will help out our district and help out the legislative body. I do think there could be a potential conflict with his previous job. You know, and if I don't have the experience, if you look at what I created in this town, we employ people. I bought a building downtown that we're renovating. I do have a skill set that will be an asset to the legislative body.
Mr. Dahl, you have 1 minute.
Currently, right now, we have a past department head who was a county legislature in District 11. It's Elaine, who is also on the Democratic side. Seems to be working just fine for her, working as a department head and now a county legislature without any ill effects. So I feel I can do the same.
Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 1 minute if you want anything to add.
I don't have anything to add because I really want to just state that Brian does have some experience. Elaine has some experience, but what I really want to get back is to the issues of the experience of building something and creating something, and that's what I've done. And I would like to take that. Like if we look at our budget right now, I'll let you go, but I see you got okay. All right.
Mr. Boyer.
Oh, okay. We'll move on to shift to a different topic. I've been asking folks about the federal COVID relief funds and how they should be spent. And instead of asking the same question I've asked 5 times, you guys probably already have the answers rehearsed. I'd like you to actually look at what's been done so far in the process that's been followed so far. I know there was an early couple of votes on a few specific things, the Emerson Park renovation, playground, amphitheater project, putting some money towards that, as well as a restaurant voucher program and money for the health department's efforts, ongoing efforts. And since then, basically, the last presentation was a very long laundry list of department head wishes. It certainly add up to much more than the total amount that is going to be available. So in terms of that process, where it's at, how do you feel like how it's been handled so far, and what would you like to see done differently as we go forward?
Because the last question to both of you was to Mr. Dahl first. We'll go with Mr. Muldrow and back and forth.
Yeah, so I think the key thing is, if I remember your question, it was pretty lengthy.
Sorry about that.
But I think the thing is, I think we got to put some of our money in the infrastructure of small businesses, if that's what you're asking, because I didn't hear the question exactly. But, and I think that, the retaining and attracting businesses, keeping people here is very important. So I think that's what you're asking, but I didn't hear the question.
And just in general, I mean, the legislature ultimately is going to make the decisions here, how to use, 12. Well, there's still about $12.5 million left to spend, and so, what do you want to prioritize? But also, what about the process? How do you get to that consensus?
Well, I think that we got to hear from our people, right? We have to hear from our constituents, and we also have to figure out a plan. I think the major thing is we have a lot of small businesses that have suffered from COVID. So we can help that issue, like give them the funds to retaining jobs and attracting jobs. I think that would be crucial. And I suffered as a business owner from COVID. So it was really detrimental to us. And, so those type of services would be very important.
Mr. Dahl, you have 2 minutes on the issue of the process as well. I think it gets into what spending should be.
Well, again, I believe that the public needs to know what that money is being used for, and I think they should have a voice as well. I mean, having department heads put in a wish list is nice. However, COVID-19 money is human service, needs funding. It should be spent, the majority of that, on human service needs. What those needs are, there's an agenda, there's a format that should be split up and used that way. But again, that's going to be a consensus between the legislature and the public, the people that are paying into this money, where the money is coming from. People forget this is grant money, which is taxpayer money, and it just can't be spent foolishly.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'd like to just take a moment, Mr. Boyer, and tell everyone, our viewers, that you are watching the 15th Legislative District here at Cayuga Community College. It is co-sponsored by the Citizen and the college. We have both candidates in the studio who are seeking to replace Ryan Foley, a Democrat, who's decided not to seek re-election. We have in the studio Brian Muldrow, who's on the Democratic Working Families Party and Auburn Party lines, as well as Brian Dahl, who's on the Republican and Conservative lines. They're being asked questions by Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, and we're about halfway through the forum. Mr. Boyer.
Okay. Well, let's move on to county government leadership structure. A big decision that has to be made eventually for the long term. The county's been operating with the chair in charge of day-to-day operations since spring 2019, as they try to decide what direction to go. So basically, it's a simple question. What leadership structure do you think the county should adopt, and why?
Mr. Dahl, you're up first with 2 minutes.
That's a loaded question, because when I first started, we had a county chair, and it was Ralph Stanbrook at the time. And it seemed to work well until they brought in a county administrator. And over those years of having 4 county administrators, the county paid out a lot of money. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They didn't work out. They didn't pan out, all because there was a failure in the system, which they didn't give the county administrator any legal structure to do anything. Basically, he was a go-to person that had to go and ask for permission. So I'm not in favor of that. If they're going to go to any system, go back to the county executor, have the elected position, we the people, have the people decide who's going to be that person, or go to a full-time county chair, not a part-time. It would have to be a full-time somebody to report to.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Muldrow, legislative structure.
Yeah,
Government
so
structure.
you know, we got a $152 million budget, and that's a task to manage that. I think we should have an administrator. I don't believe it should be an elected official, just because we're going to get to a political conversation. But I do think that the county needs to work in managing, legislating rather than managing the budget. So I think the administrator would be the direction I would like to go.
Mr. Boyer.
Okay. One of the things that's, although it's been happening for a few years now, but there's another current needs assessment being looked at for the Cayuga County office building downtown. And basically, decisions need to be made at some point on whether we're going to have a major renovation of that facility and keep basically the center of county government in that building, or prefer or relocate, do something, whether it's outside the city or inside the city, but build a new building. Based on what you know and what you've seen, I'm sure you've both been in the building plenty of times. What are your thoughts on that question? Which direction should the county go?
Okay, and Mr. Muldrow, you're up first with 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's ideally centrally located in the best location. You know, I'd like to see some major renovations done. However, again, you know, if that body is expanding, if it needs more facility, we could look at relocating it. But ideally, the ideal would be to renovate that and keep it centrally located where it is. I think it's ideally in the best spot location that we have in the county.
Okay, Mr. Dahl, who I think you had an office there once.
I did, and my office had to be abated in the basement. The problem with renovating that facility is the floor tiles are made of maniculite, which are cancer-causing agents. The asbestos throughout the building. The 6th floor and the basement, part of the basement was abated, and also part of the 5th floor. When you abate one floor, you shut the entire floor down. So how do you shut down the entire social services department or the treasurer's department? You basically shut down the entire building. So my issue is, back in 2014, there was a study that came out through Bartless and Judas, basically telling the legislature then that the building needed to be demolished and a new one rebuilt. Every year, we don't do anything with that building. The cost of the infrastructure rebuilding goes up. So yes, it needs to be centrally located. I think that it's a great spot where it is. It's easy access to a point. Moving maybe out to the Finger Lakes Mall to build a new facility, tear the old one down and build up a new structure, that's a little easier to get into. Economically, you know, user-friendly, the public can get into it. And we got to start having meetings there again, once again. We can't be shutting doors and not allowing people in.
Okay, Mr. Boyer.
Okay, another pool of money that's available or will be coming to Cayuga County is about $1 million from opioid pharmaceutical industry lawsuit settlements. Certainly, addiction and substance abuse is still a major problem in the community. So with the county being the one getting that money, what do you think the best uses for those kinds of funds would be?
Mr. Dahl, this is about the money that the Attorney General announced earlier last week.
Currently, right now, we have the Cayuga County Nursing Home that I believe is empty. It's not being utilized for anything. If you were to go into any type of drug rehab, we're transporting patients across the state to other facilities. There's hardly any training. There's a couple of doctors in town that are trying to do clinics. It's not working. We have an epidemic. And for the first time in 2 hours, I haven't carried Narcan in my pocket. I've had to use it over 100 times in my last 2-3 years working as an EMT, critical care technician. It's not fun. You pull up on somebody to take care of. So yeah, there's an epidemic, and I think the county needs to use some of that money, if not all, to create a treatment facility and get the help that these folks need. It is a disease.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Mr. Muldrow, how would you use the money that the Attorney General announced recently?
I think there is some services that are doing well in there. I think that we need to evaluate the programs that are successful in this community and support those programs and fund those programs. I don't know if $1 million would accomplish taking over a whole facility, because that $1 million is going to be exhausted, and there's already people out there doing good work. So I would support. I would actually invite them in, and I think the legislature should decide which one of those facilities had the most success.
Mr. Boyer, do you? I'm sorry.
The money, the $1 million is a shot in the arm. It's not going to be enough to fix the issue. It's a good start, but there's a lot needs to be put into it.
Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 1 minute.
So, I really try to figure out what's practical, right? Practical would mean if we're going to hire doctors, we're going to buy a building, we're going to fund it, we're going to exceed that $1 million quickly. $1 million is the number. That's the number we got, right? So with that $1 million, we have to figure out what we can do with that $1 million. One of the things we can do with $1 million is find out locally which one of these programs or each of these programs are the most successful, and award that $1 million proportionally based on that.
Mr. Dahl, you'll have a minute.
It'll be quick. The program that we have right now is not working. When I'm giving Narcan to a patient that needs Narcan 2 to 3 times a week, the program's not working.
Mr. Muldrow, I'm going to give you the last minute, and then we'll move on.
Okay, I'm not removed to say the programs are not working, right? So, but what we're focused on right now is $1 million, right? So the $1 million, I see this. I have a drug alcohol testing company. I see people struggling firsthand. I sit on a drug coalition board. I see it. But we can't, what we have is $1 million to deal with. That $1 million we have to distribute accordingly based on who's the most successful programs currently existing. It's going to take way more than $1 million to build a program.
Mr. Boyer.
Okay. We'll talk now about COVID-19 vaccines. I checked this morning, and according to CDC, 65.6% of New York State population is fully vaccinated, compared with 53.3% of Cayuga County. So I'd like from each of you to your thoughts on how much of a concern should we have about that number, and what should county legislators do with respect to promoting vaccination.
Mr. Muldrow, you're up first with 2 minutes.
Well, obviously, that 12% deficit is the issue, right? So we actually want to be higher than what the state mandate is. I think that the best approach is we always talk about education, right? So our first education was get vaccinated, you're not going to get COVID. Well, we know that's not true. I think now that we have to do is educate on the booster shot and give people the ability to choose, like if they want to have this protection or not. You have to educate them on what we know now after the first round of getting vaccinated.
Okay. Mr. Dahl, on this issue of the differential rate, and what can the county legislature do?
I think the county has done a good job of educating and getting the word out and getting the clinics, up and running and getting people vaccinated. Mandation, it's education over mandation. Mandation is just going to drive people further away. One of our constitutional rights is to refuse anything that we don't want done to our bodies. The way things are being pushed now is everybody's going to be forced to do something. I know I've talked to people. I'm fully vaccinated as a transplant patient. I'm immunocompromised. I'm not afraid of COVID. I've had it. I've dealt with it. I'm perfectly fine. So if people want to get the shot, great. If people don't want to get a shot, okay, that's on you. But when you get sick, you're going to have to deal with the consequences, but not forcing people on it.
Okay, Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 1 minute on this.
I also don't agree in every situation mandates, right? I just don't agree with it. But I do tell you in certain circumstances, I do. And I'm brave enough to say that. The reason being is you don't just get the vaccine for yourself, you get it for other people. I would not feel comfortable knocking on these doors and showing up at people's houses and having events like this if I wasn't vaccinated. Even though it's my choice to say I don't want to do this, I do have a responsibility if I'm going to be in the public light and dealing with people, children. I donate my time. I'm around elderly people. I do have a responsibility for them to get vaccinated. So in certain circumstances, I do believe in mandating.
You believe that there should be a mandate for county government employees across the board, Cayuga County government.
So, Jeremy, I knew you were going to ask me that question. Okay.
And this will be for both candidates,
Sure.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? Right now, I don't think it's necessary. Right now, I think that now I have a statistic. I think it's 70% of the county employees are vaccinated, and I believe that's correct. If that is the correct number, I don't think we need to do anything at this point. However, if we were at 40 to 30%, I would say yes. But at 70%, I think we're okay because, I think that there's enough people vaccinated that I feel comfortable having them out in the community and doing their jobs.
I'm going to use this as a follow-up. So Mr. Muldrow had a minute. You'll have a minute on this issue of the mandating county employees.
The old saying is no is no. If somebody says no and they don't want it, they don't get it. You got to leave it at that. I mean, I'm not in favor of forcing anybody to have it, whether we're at 10%. If they don't want it, they say no, fine. Right now, a year ago, our nursing staff and all of our police officers across the country, our firefighters, were all heroes. Now they're zeros because some of them didn't get their vaccine. No, I'm not in favor of mandating anybody to get a vaccine.
Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 1 minute on this.
My daughter goes to Cayuga College, and she went to MCC prior to that. There was a ton of vaccinations she needed before she got there. This has now become a political argument about mandating. Again, I don't believe in mandating. If I go to the hospital and I took the time to protect myself, or if I have a fatal illness, I'd be concerned that the people working on me are not vaccinated. I would be really concerned, right? So I think that they are heroes, but they also got vaccinations prior to taking that job. So I think that it's come to the issue that it's such a all at once. Like we've been dealing with it for 2 years. It just hit us all at once, and it's a lot to take in. But I believe in the science, and I believe that we should have people vaccinated if they're going to be working with the public in the medical field. I do believe that.
Mr. Dahl, you'll have
years
1
ago
minute.
we received a polio vaccine. That polio vaccine took many years to develop and to inoculate the population. It was safe and proven effective. This, within a year, was sent out to everyone, and everyone was told to get this shot. Now they're mandating the shot. You got people scared to death that they don't want to get this because people are dying. Not a lot of people are dying from COVID. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not into that. Like I said, I received my shot. If I bring a patient in that needs blood in the ER because they're going to die without it, and we explain them the risk and benefits to receiving a pint of blood, and they say no, again, they can refuse that pint of blood. So.
Okay. I'm going to move it on because I would like Mr. Boyer to have a chance to give you at least 2 more questions, and so I'm going to keep going just to keep it all fair. Mr. Boyer.
Yeah, and I'd love to continue, but I do want to get to a few more topics. A big one, of course, is water quality, and we should have a discussion about water quality, in particular, Owasco watershed. Being an Auburn district, the Owasco Lake harmful algal blooms is a major concern, continues to be. So I'd like to know, based on, the idea that you'll be on the legislature next year, what would you want to start advocating for as far as the next steps that need to be taken from the county on this issue of protecting and revitalizing or improving the quality of Owasco Lake?
Mr. Dahl, you're first up on this one.
The first thing that I would want to do is get busy and get things done. Stop talking about it. There's a plan out there that the DEC has on their desk. There's no reason why the county can't get something started. Currently, right now, nothing's being done. They're blaming it on the farmers. It's not all the farmers. It's the phosphorus. It's the other pollutants that are coming into our lake from the southern border down the Cortland Way. Back in the day, Smith Corona polluted our lake. We had the best drinking water in Auburn. I used to love to drink the water. I can't drink the water in Auburn anymore. You got Cayuga Lake. They're having problems with geese there. We're having problems with geese here. Lake Ontario, having issues there with flooding. We need to protect all of the waterways and all of our drinking waters throughout the county. We need to get busy.
Okay. Mr. Muldrow, you'll have 2 minutes as well on this issue of water quality.
Well, if you're looking for something that me and my opponent agree on, that's one of them. Okay. I definitely agree with him. But I also think that, outside the water, we need, that water can help our economy. It can drive people here. People can frequent the beach. There's a lot of activities at the beach. I've never been a boat person, right? But we've been talking about getting this amphitheater done up there. We've been talking about redoing Emerson Park up there. So this could be a money revenue, taking off some of the burden of the taxpayers. So this is one of the rare times that you and I agree, man. But I agree with him on that, absolutely. And I think there's a plan. We need to put some pressure on New York to get their plan, to get them to approve it and get moving with it.
Mr. Boyer.
Okay. The current chair, Aileen McNabb Coleman, is in her second year, almost the whole time during a pandemic, of course. But she's indicated that she would be interested. She will be there next year. She's not running for re-election, so she would be interested in remaining as chair. Now, of course, we have no idea how the chips are going to fall here with this election, but given that she would put her hat in the ring, tell me whether you would support her, why or why not.
And Mr. Muldrow, you'll go first, and then Mr. Dahl.
100% I would support her. I would support her because, not only the great job that she's done and her character, her dedication to our city and the county, I'd also support her because with COVID, she's been thrust into the situation. With no book, no manual to figure it out, and she's done an awesome job. So 100% would I support her.
Mr. Dahl, on this issue of re-electing Aileen McNabb Coleman.
If like you said, depending on how the chips fall in January and where the makeup is, if she was the only one that was vying for the position, absolutely. As a party, I've got to follow my party lines on that and vote for my constituents. Some people want her out. Some people, and I have no issue with her at all. I mean, I think she's done a fairly good job.
Okay. You'll have 1 minute.
So, we were going back and forth about Ryan, right? And I would tell you that, I'm a Democrat, and locally, I don't think it matters. And I say that because, when we're at a national level, there's certain core things like the death penalty, like pro-choice, those things we don't legislate on. But locally, I'm connected to the city and I'm connected to my district. And, you know, again, we talk about being bipartisan. He said he would support his party. He just said he had no problem with Elaine, but he would support his party. I'm not trying to make this debate confrontational, but I want you guys to know that I come in with no political affiliation. I love my Democrats. I'm for some of them, and I challenge some of them as well. I have some Republican friends, lots of them, that I support. And there's some in the legislative body that I've worked nice with and worked well with and encourage them. And I put their signs in my yard. So I would tell you that I'm getting to 30 seconds here. I'll tell you that I would never want somebody to leave because my party wanted to leave.
Mr. Dahl, you'll have 1 minute.
Again, taken out of context. It depends on where the party lines fall comes January. If she was the only one that was running, I would support her 100%. It's not easy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of new people coming in. I think there's 3 or 4 legislators coming in January. I don't think the 3 or 4 of us coming in would be qualified for that position. So somebody would have to step up and say they wanted to take that position on. If she's the only one that steps up, then she's the one that we're going to support.
Okay, Mr. Boyer, you're down to your last 1 minute question.
1 minute question? Okay. Well, I asked this the last time, and probably it's a 1 minute question. Based on your experience, what you know, what you think your skill set is best suited to, which of the committees do you think you would like to be appointed to if you're successful in winning this election? The legislature committees.
Okay, Mr. Dahl, you get the last question because Mr. Muldrow got the first question, so you get the last one
I am happy
first.
to sit on any committee that they appoint me to sit on. I've worked with every one of those committees, and they're all actually a lot of fun to work with. You hear from the department heads, you hear from the constituents. You know, if they put me on planning and economics, I'll be on planning and economics and put 100% to it.
Mr. Muldrow, which committees would you like to be on?
Again, you know, I would, you know, be proud to serve on any of those committees. But I think I'd be better suited for planning and economics.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Boyer. Thank you for your question. We'll come back to you in just a moment. We're going to end, as we said at the beginning, with the closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes. We reversed the order. Brian Dahl, the first of our 2 Brians today. I have 2 Jeffs in 2 weeks with the city manager and Jeff Perizzola, but I have my 2 Brians in the room today. We will have you close out. Brian Dahl, who is on the Republican and Conservative lines. Mr. Dahl, you have 2 minutes.
Very good. Thank you, staff and students and our forum representatives here. My fellow constituents, over the years, your taxes have gone up and very little has done to fix anything. Your current situation has us at a standstill on both sides, opposing each other at your expense. Many studies have been paid for and completed, and little has been done to accomplish what those studies have shown us that needs to be done. On the other hand, we want to get these items, such as our lakes or water quality, fixed. I want to ensure that our youth programs for all are met. I want programs for our our aging population, and God knows we're all getting there. I am 100% in support of all public safety. I want to fix our beautiful lakes and our drinking water. I want to fix our failing infrastructures. Let's bring growth back to our city and our county. Let's keep our population here in Cayuga County as has decreased over the years. I'm asking you just to get out and vote, please. Vote Brian Dahl, November 2nd for Cayuga County Legislature. I am committed and I am dedicated to Cayuga County, one and all.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. We'll now hear from Brian Muldrow, who is on the Democratic Working Family and Auburn Party lines.
I want to thank everybody that participated in this event today. You know, we're in an important election right now, and our county faces many issues. And I'd like to tell you that I believe I'm the best candidate. You know, I've been a businessman, a coach, a mentor. I work with people from all backgrounds, all youth, ages, all parties, and I want to bring all the concerns of my District 15 and our city to the forefront. I want to tackle these slum landlords. Not all landlords. Let me be clear. Not all landlords. Slum landlords. I want to attack some of the opiate problem in our community. I want to get down and meet with those parents, meet with those organizations that are on the front lines, and work with them intimately. I want to increase affordable housing in this area. Now I know that it's a stance, but a big portion of our rental property is affordable housing. I want to convert those. I want to convert those people into homeowners. I want to use my business skills to help manage and budget the budget. So I would like for your support, and throughout for your vote and your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muldrow. And thank you both of you for joining us in the studio and the students here at College Tape. We wish you well on the campaign trail. We know it's not always easy, especially in this weird situation with COVID and trying to do door-to-door and meeting with your future constituents. So thank you again for doing this. Again, thank you to Mr. Boyer, who has now done 5 of these legislative ones and tried to spice it up with different questions for all of you and not get rote. And we'd also like to thank you, more importantly, the voters who have taken the time over the last hour to listen to the candidates for the 15th Legislative District. We want you to go out there, as we would like all voters to do. Go out and exercise your right to vote on November 2nd. If you want to take advantage of early voting, it starts this Saturday on October 23rd. So go to the polls. We'll return this Tuesday where we will finish off our series of forums. This will be our biannual City Council Forum next Tuesday, October 26th, with all 4 candidates running for 2 seats. Incumbent Terry Cuddy will be here, as well as Ginny Kent, Mr. Timothy Lattimore, and Rob Otterstader. City Councilor Debbie McCormick has decided not to seek re-election, but we'll have all 4 candidates here in the studio with Mr. Boyer and myself to ask them questions. Because of the number of forums that are put on, the Citizen does put these up on their website, auburnpub.com, almost immediately, so you can download them and watch them. You can also go to the college's website, Media Cayuga, and see them as well. The Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, will run this forum this Saturday and Sunday on Spectrum Channels 12 and 98 and Fios 31 starting at 6 p.m. and Win 89.1 on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. if you would like to listen to it. We'll return to our regular programming on Election Day with 2 Inside Government shows, as I mentioned, with Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeffrey Parazola giving us a district update, and another with Auburn City Manager Jeff Dygert. On November 4th, Cayuga County Health Director Kathleen Cuddy will be giving us an update on the county's response to COVID and an update on where we are with vaccines. And then on November 9th, Mayor Michael D. Quill will be in the studio to give us a city update as well. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night. Have a great tomorrow and be safe and mask up.